Hey folks, Tom Norfleet with www.citizenshipquickly.com, here to talk to you today about offshore bank accounts and also prenuptial agreements, something that you really need to learn about. It's very important subjects that if you're interested in asset protection. The big question is, why should you have an offshore bank account? Are they legal? How does this relate to having a prenuptial agreement? Well, first of all, what's the best way to protect your assets from getting seized by the IRS, your ex-wife, or some greedy lawyer that wants a percentage of your assets? The answer is an offshore bank account. If you look at the top 10 safest countries in the world to bank in, the USA is not even in the top 10 list. How good really is the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, when just one bank in reality in the USA could actually bankrupt the FDIC? The FDIC is supposed to insure up to 250,000 US dollars per account holder if a bank goes bankrupt, but the reality is this is not the case. As of June the 30th, 2011, the FDIC Deposit Insurance Fund had a balance of only 3.9 billion US dollars to provide loss protection of 6.54 trillion of insured assets. The problem with this is this means that every 10,000 in deposits was protected by only 6 US dollars in reserves. The FDIC has closed hundreds of banks since 2008, so the USA is not a safe place to bank. If the FDIC reserves dry up, the taxpayers either have to kick in the funds by taxpayers, but then this can cause a run on the banks and also a Great Depression. So is your money really safe in a bank in the USA or any other country that does not require a high level of liquid reserves for depositors? Private offshore banking started as early as the 1600s, and yes, it is 100% legal as long as you comply with reporting requirements in the country where you're living, or if you are a U.S. citizen, the laws of the USA, even if you do not live in the USA, since the USA taxes its citizens and its residents on their worldwide income. U.S. green card holders are still responsible for reporting their worldwide income. Even if they have left the USA, if green card holders have not legally been terminated and if tax forms are not filed. This is a statute of limitation where the US IRS can go after you for back taxes, penalties, and interest. Why would someone want an offshore bank account to begin with? Well, when you have statistics that show where 50% of marriages end in divorce, and a huge likelihood if you are a high net worth individual that your chances of getting sued sometime in your life are pretty high and through the roof if you live in the USA, this would be great reasons to have an offshore bank account. I've seen many people go broke for not planning asset protection in advance. Just think about this for a minute. Would you invest into an investment where you knew that there was 50% chance that you would lose half your assets? Well, this is what you're doing by getting married without a prenuptial agreement and an offshore bank account combination. I might have some people that do not like me for saying this, but you're downright foolish to get married if you don't have a rock solid prenuptial agreement in place before you get married in the country where you have residency. And this needs to be done by a good lawyer that knows what he's doing. A prenuptial agreement should always be set up and dated before the marriage date is set and should be done even if you're broke when you're getting married. I've seen prenuptial agreements overturned in the USA because the marriage date and plans for the marriage was set before the signing of the prenuptial agreement. The reason this can present a problem in a divorce settlement, especially in the USA for a person setting up a prenuptial agreement, is if you make it look as if the agreement was signed under pressure or duress. If the date of the prenuptial agreement was signed after the marriage date was set and there is a record of that, then you got a problem. You have to be really careful on this. Jeff Bezos had to borrow money from his father to start Amazon.com. This is how financially he was at that time. He started this business in his garage, and when his marriage split up, a good portion of his assets went to his spouse because he didn't do any sort of prenuptial planning in advance. Even a good prenuptial agreement a lot of times will not be good enough. I've seen tons of prenuptials overturned in the courts because of infidelity, children born in the marriage, or not making sure the other spouse was represented by his or her own lawyer before signing the prenuptial agreement. Prenuptials do not work if you put assets in a joint bank account or joint brokerage account with your spouse, because those assets are owned by the two of you now. If your fiance will not pay for a lawyer to represent himself or herself with a prenuptial agreement, pay for yourself and or don't get married. It's not worth it. I've seen too many problems come because of this one instance right here. You also need another wall if the prenuptial agreement is overturned in the courts. Remember, a prenuptial agreement pertains to money that you own in your own name, not money that you did not own, like assets owned by an offshore corporation whose shares are owned by 100% by an offshore trust. The second best wall, if the prenuptial agreement is overturned by a judge, is an offshore bank account with an offshore corporation where 100% of the shares are owned by a trust that is in a jurisdiction that has a 0 statute of limitation period on lawsuits. And there's only one country in the world that has a 0 statute of limitations on lawsuits, and that country is Belize in Central America. Asset protection is like buying insurance. You need asset protection before you have a problem, and not when you have the problem, because doing so when you have the problem is called fraudulent conveyance. You should be putting a lot of money. You shouldn't be putting a lot of money in Belize banks, though. There's a difference between having a Belize bank and having a Belize bank account or having a Belize trust. They're totally two different things. I would avoid banks that are in Belize. There were only 4 banks in the world that had a AAA rating with Fitch in 2018, and 3 were in Germany and 1 was in Switzerland. Singapore is another great place where bank failure is almost non-existent, and all banks there are rock solid. The regulatory or authority, or MAS, which is the Monetary Authority of Singapore, is very strict on their banks in Singapore. MAS will find the banks for almost anything, so a strong rein is kept on these banks. This is a 2-part series that we've got on prenuptial agreements and offshore banks. What I'm going to do is we'll be going over more on these details on the next video. If you got a comment, just shoot it, or a question, just shoot it to us. We'll do what we can to answer that. And also, if you have a desire to look at more tapes, if you hit the subscription button to the right of your screen, just hit that and you'll get new videos as they come out. Look forward to talking to you on the next video. Take care. Bye.